Yeah. I think you are in MIT WPU. So near.
That is true.
Bhanu, I saw is there any problem, Bhanu?
No, he's joining. And sir, we are going live in a minute.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
So I will start introducing.
Hello, Mr. Bhanu, can you hear us?
Wow, Bhanu, you look great. Hi, Bhanu. Can you hear? Saurabh, he has a problem. Saurabh?
Yes, I guess he can hear us, but we can't hear him actually.
No, I guess he is not able to hear us. Bhanu, can you hear us? Hello? Hello? Okay, let me phone him. Because I think we have to get going.
This open streaming, where it will be coming?
So on YouTube, sir.
Okay, okay.
Okay. I'll just share the link over here in the chat.
Please, please.
Hello, Bhanu? Hello? Hello, Bhanu?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good, good. We can also hear you. So, welcome, Bhanu. You look great. And
Thank you so much.
and Joe is as fresh as ever. So I get the energy from you.
All
Thank
right.
you. And we have been very ably assisted by Saurabh and Durga. So that is our team. And Saurabh, just start recording and then we start. Welcome, Bhanu. You look great. And Joe is as fresh as ever. So I get the energy from you. All right. And we have been very assisted by Saurabh and Durga. So that is our team. And Saurabh, just start recording and then we start.
Good morning to all of you. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. But I'm very delighted to welcome the audience from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar. I'm quite excited as compared to earlier one, which was for India and Maldives, mainly because the Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar represent the diversity. And for the diversity issue is so closely linked to the need of openness of data. The languages are different, cultures are different, and also the way of educating the people, educating the students and the young also differ from country to country. And hence, today we are coming to a very common issue for all these three countries, which is called as the openness of the data. As the word goes, openness and the data, they seem to be very common. But when we say the need for having openness on data, that need connects to how we handle the crisis and how we handle the solutions based on man-made issues as well as from the nature. And that openness is going to create not only what is called as a positive competition, but it also becomes an essential solution for our existential threats. And hence, the university students, which I believe are in a forefront of the thinking on making sure that their own invention, creation, and thinking and the information that they are generated needs to be widely spread and not only confined to themselves, their group, their communities, or their country. I'm sure they are struggling to get global. And this workshop is going to say exactly the fundamental elements of how the university students can go global. I have with me the speakers. One important one is Bhanu Nopan from UNESCO in France, and Joe Thomas from Australia, Melbourne, and he will be introduced as he speaks on his topic. Unfortunately, the fourth speaker, that is Dr. Anil Sahasrabudhe, has got a very urgent engagement in New Delhi, and he will not be joining. But I believe that, as was informed to me by Bhanu as well as Joe, that it would give more time to the students and the university faculty to interact with us. And that interaction is exceedingly important. Is that okay, Saurabh? Saurabh?
Yeah. Maybe Professor Joe, you can mute.
Yeah, you can probably mute. Okay, now it's okay. So we have the excellent speakers here, and I look forward to the interaction from the faculty and the students, which is most important because it should not be one-way flow of talking on openness. When we talk about openness, it is not an openness of only speakers, but it's also the openness of the audience. And that's what we are going to achieve. So let me start by wishing you all Happy New Year 2022. And as I said to many of the university vice chancellors from the three countries, 2022 will be proving what is called as an extremely formidable and challenging year for all humanity. And I'm sure today's speakers will also highlight how the openness of data, scientific information would help to overcome those 2022 challenges and get going, looking forward to the decade of action as declared by United Nations. So our first speaker is Bhanu Nopan, and he is advisor to UNESCO for information and communication issues. He's a double doctorate. First doctorate from Canada and another is from France. He started his career with the agricultural issues. So I would say he's a ground level man. He has touched the real bottom of the issues, that is a land, that is an earth, is a mother. And then he expanded his knowledge to the hydro systems, and then come on a top of all the issues which are grappling this world on what is called as the openness of data and the education. Bhanu is a proponent of the important project that my organization is conducting, which is a network of universities called Smart Campus Cloud Network. Bhanu is in the forefront of decision-making in UNESCO and in the education field. So let us hear Bhanu Nopan. Bhanu, the phone is
Thank you
yours.
so much. Thank you so much. That's quite humbling, Raz. As I would always say, it's an honor to be invited by TERRE Policy Center, and it's definitely an honor to share the panel with Professor Joe and yourself. So I'm really delighted to be here. Essentially, to take the discussion forward, I hope that you would allow me to share my screen. Let me share my screen, and we'll take it from there. Can you see my screen there?
Yes.
Take it forward to the first
I
slide.
can see the screen, but I think you have to blow up the PowerPoint.
PowerPoint is already blown up. I think you have to change your setting there. Okay, what I will do is, I will essentially say that, how democratizing knowledge will essentially take the enhance our capability to achieve sustainable development goal, and also make us ready to deal with various climate related issues. I would definitely like to thank Professor Thomas for joining us here with us. He's in fact one of the prominent scientists who actually speaks about openness of data in the medical field, which is extremely important in today's days. And of course, you all know our good friend, Rajendra Sande, who is spearheading a number of things, including this Smart Campus Cloud Network, for which we UNESCO supports, and we are doing a number of things today. Many of you watching this webinar on YouTube must be checking the panelists LinkedIn profiles at this moment, or searching us on Google. Know that your search will result into many unwanted search results and solicitation. Some of them will be good and and some of them will definitely not that good. So just to take this thing forward, indeed, the digital world and technology are reordering our lives in all possible sense. In fact, it has reordered entire disciplines and industries. These days, we definitely do not, go as much as, we used to go to do shopping in malls. We essentially rely on Amazon and eBay to get our different, like products and services. For internet entertainment, we have stopped going to movies, and use Netflix and Amazon Prime and G5 and whatnot, to stream, different videos. For journalism also, instead of buying newspaper, we are in fact, we depend services of digital citizen journalism, digitization, online blogs, video contents, that get streamed to our computer screens and mobile. And communication has also improved. These days, and I'm not too sure, when you have picked up a phone and called your father or mother, but instead, you actually video chat with your mother or your father or your friends on Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, and so forth. And similarly, like industries right now, there was a meeting that I attended yesterday, and someone made a very, interesting revelation that all the new industries are no longer selling goods and services, but they are selling data. What kind of car you want, it essentially gets, sensed through your maybe different post, that you have done on social media on whether you like purple or blue or gray or whatnot. They will also, find out, immediately that, whether or not, you are thinking about, taking a trip to see your a brother or sister in maybe Ruhuna Basin, or maybe in Naypyidaw, or maybe in Chatgaon. So some of these things get immediately get sensed, and then immediately you'll start receiving various like suggestion or suggestive feeds, and they will guide you to different portals and websites which are offering goods and services and selling things to you. So services through machine learning and artificial intelligence has essentially changed our lives and livelihood. But what about science? Has science changed with it? Whether or not this digital technologies, a new method of scientific research and dissemination for SDGs and climate change are like in the common place and accessible to everyone. If this availability of big data and improved processing power is indeed like making us much more advanced in terms of how we are doing research or conducting a research to develop services for physical for humanity. Whether or not scientists are using new communication tools to engage with wider community to build knowledge societies and ready to take different challenges associated with sustainable development goals. Whether or not science has become more open and ready for sustainable development goals. And if this is happening, the question comes whether or not we need new champions to drive the agenda forward. Of course, we do new champions, and this is one of the reasons why we are organizing this meeting. That
sorry to interrupt you, Vanu.
Yes, please.
Your slides are not on a full screen; they are very micro. Is that correct, Joe? Can you see his slides?
No, I can't. It's a small. It's not
Small. So
enlarged,
probably,
yeah.
Vanu, you have to click some buttons at the toolbar to make it blow up full screen. Yeah, I think you are doing it. So just follow that. It is still not clear, but we see all your slides.
Let me just do this. Let me just stop sharing for a bit.
Yeah.
Change the. Let me just do it now like this. And now I share it. And I say that, I'll share the screen 2, because screen 2 is the bigger one. So let us, in fact, share. Is it bigger now?
Yes, it's better.
I'm just, like, is it bigger?
Yeah. Now you can go ahead. Vanu, perfect.
Oh, so this is bigger now. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just, like closing all the, I'm sorry about this, again, like I clicked on something, and then I can't see it anymore. Okay, let me just do it one more time,
Yeah, you can switch it off and start again.
Okay, just new share. I share this one, screen one, share. Can you see it?
Yes, I can see, but there is a double. So probably you need to adjust it.
Is
Yeah.
it better now?
Yeah, I can see it, but now you have to blow up single slide because we see multi. Now it is again original small.
Original small. Okay.
Yeah. So I suggest that you switch off your share and
Okay.
restart share.
Wow, this is very interesting. God knows, what is happening. Normally, these type of things do not happen, but is it better now?
No, it is a small.
Small.
What I would request is, Mr. Bhanu, can you can you stop share, and then when you start again the sharing,
Right.
you can go for share entire screen option.
Okay, share entire screen option. Basic and portion of screen, or no?
Start sharing.
You can click on screen option, the very first that you get.
I've done it. I've done it.
Okay.
I've done it, and oh, it's in fact, it's a lot of things are happening. Screen. So if I do this, is it better?
Yes, looks to be better now. Yes. Bhanu,
Is it
now
better?
don't click anything. Yeah, it says, but what about science? That is your full screen slide. So start from there.
Okay, this is, so you can see it, it's much better, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, but what about science? Again, I'll go back to the same question. I'm sorry about that. This about 2 minutes of, like distraction was definitely not, what I wanted to have. But again, like the science is definitely not utilizing the power of new technology and power of openness and power of, power that internet has enabled us. So for this, we require science to start, using more of the power that internet has bestowed on us. And then for this, we are, in fact, in need of new champions. And this is one of the reasons why we are organizing this meeting, so that, we will get more champions to drive the agenda forward. Perhaps the answer is yes, as I said before. So one of the things that we'll have to do is, if we have to look at, okay, how science is being created for sustainable development, for climate in any particular country, we have to look at two different things: whether or not we've got people available to drive the agenda forward, and whether or not we have got resources to do the research. Let me just take you through some of the basic statistics of Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka, which will provide us whether or not we've got people or full-time researcher equivalent who can do science the way that we want, and whether or not our governments are putting in enough capital to drive the science agenda forward. So the researcher, this is a full-time researcher equivalent per million population. The number of researcher, if you analyze the STI progress, number of researchers per million can be a very good indicators. There are about 100 full-time researchers in Myanmar per million population, and there are about 107 researchers per million population. For Bangladesh, I did not find similar figure, but is it enough for us to manage the various goals related to sustainable development as well as to drive the climate agenda forward? Let us also look at whether or not we have got money available. Bangladesh is currently investing about 0.3%, just about 0.3% of GDP on sciences. Sri Lanka spends just about 0.1% or 0.13% of the total GDP, and Myanmar is only spending about 0.3% of its GDP on sciences. Let us compare this figure with Southeast Asia, and you will see that like for example Singapore, Malaysia, and so forth. They are all spending more than 2%. And if you look at the GERD, or that is gross expenditure on research and development, China is spending about 2.5, and maybe this is one of the reasons why Chinese like science and innovation is taking a different stride than our countries that we are discussing here today. But one of the things which comes and which is a very important one is we must take note that science needs to be disseminated. It's not about creating science per se, and science or any form of scholarship for that matter happens when we talk about it, when we write about it, when we share it and use or create a condition to be reused, experimented, re-experimented, and so forth. In the word of Christopher Surridge, who is editor of Plus One, he says that science happens not just because of people doing experiment, but because they are discussing about this experiment. So unless we publish our data as well as our scientific articles which are peer-reviewed, perhaps science does not get the right course and right momentum to reach and start benefiting the citizen of a country. So let us in fact look at peer-reviewed journals. Bangladesh published about 6,362 articles in 2019. Sri Lanka published about 2,140 journal articles in 2019, and Myanmar published about 639. If you look at this and put it in the context, you will see that Myanmar, where from which is in fact the scientific publication is increasing just like anything. I put a scale here, and I put that okay, for example, Indonesia is publishing in about 37,000. Australia, on the other hand, is publishing about 87,000 peer-reviewed journal articles per year. And if you look at the same thing, for Sri Lanka is also is only publishing about 2,140, and then Myanmar is publishing just about 639. But the real issue becomes whether or not these are accessible, and if we are publishing it in a closed, say, subscription-based publication model, perhaps something that you are publishing will not reach out or reach to those who can actually use it. If we in fact compare that and this publication in per million of inhabitants, Sri Lanka is publishing about 100 articles per million in inhabitants. Bangladesh is publishing in just about 39, which is very low, and Myanmar is only publishing about 12 articles per million publication. So this is very low. And if you look at like to what extent these are provided in open, Bangladesh only has about 21 open access journals, just about 21 open access and indexed in DOAJ. And there are about 197 reference in ROAD, which is another database that tracks what kind of information is available in open domain. Sri Lanka has about 17 journals which it publishes in through open access mode. And Myanmar only has one journal that it publishes in open, say, open access mode. So there are very few publication or very few articles.
Saurabh, there is a problem.
Raj, will it be possible for you to switch off your mic? Unless, of course, there is something that you want to speak about. So perhaps, what we need, therefore, is to change the education as well as publication culture of our country. We may have to somehow, promote, universal scientific literacy and not just talk about, science literacy in general. The other thing, that will be very much, needed is how can we somehow, change the publication culture and institute openness in scientific communication processes. And this is very interesting and important, that whatever we are publishing in terms of our, journal articles, as well as in terms of, data, that needs to reach out to the public, as soon as it is prepared. So perhaps, this is the reason why, we need to push for not just, stuff for, science 1.0, which is kind of, closed science, something that we do in our lab, and then, push toward, like a discipline called science 2.0, which is very much integrated. This is the way how we can enhance the utility aspect of science, fully utilize our access to technology, and help use it for the benefit of humankind. So this is extremely important. And why science 2.0? And there is a very interesting thing. And in 2018, we had conducted a research, and we found that 10 out of 17 sustainable development goals requires continuous feed of scientific research output. So when we talk about sustainable development goal, unless openness is there, and unless real-timeness of this openness is there, sustainable development goal will not be achieved, because the scientific input required to drive this agenda forward is not there. So what is open access? Open access is some of you may know that science 2.0 and web 2.0 have co-evolved. Like this is a more say a Boolean type like research that has come. So scientific access to open access to scientific publication data, collaboration across scientific network, publishing blog articles, wikis for open access have come to characterize what open science or science 2.0 that we talk about. So this requires a major shift being seen from the closed peer-reviewed journal publishing toward an open publishing of both like scientific articles as well as of scientific data. So what is open access? Open access of publication is defined when there are no financial or legal or technical barriers to accessing it. That is to say that when anyone can read, download, copy, distribute, print, search, and research, and then utilize something that is already published or in open to continue or adding building blocks to the research that has already done. So it happens when the right holders grants worldwide right to access to copy, use, distribute, transmit the content, both the content meaning content of scientific like publication as well as data. So what is happening is there is a positive growth, that is taking place in the world in initiative to, these are like repositories in different parts of the world. And these are growing, but if you see that that most of the growth is taking place in the developed world, and developing world has failed to catch up with this. So this is where I think we need to somehow strengthen our our effort. So most countries have now, established, policies toward toward open access, and these there are about close to about 13 or 1400 policies that have established all across the world, and open access journals are also increasing, and many of the journals require that along with the articles, the researchers must also submit the data that they have collected to drive to arrive at the conclusion noted in that articles. So right now, these open access journals are available in about 80 languages. It covers 130 countries. There are about 12,254 journals without APCs meaning article processing charge. And there are 17,380 journals, which are there in the open access domain. And it roughly carries about 8 million, article records. Compared to that, there are about, 7 or 8 times of that in the closed, so every time you try to access this database or this journal, you'll hit a screen which we call paywall, which is say that okay, in order to read this article you'll have to pay $35 per view or something of that sort. So although open access is developing in different parts of the world, there is an uneasy gap that is existing in different parts of the world, and this requires that we have to tame the knowledge flow for SDGs and developing, and then to make that this knowledge flow for SDGs and how the countries are developing are somehow linked. So if you check the recent publication that Jeffrey Sachs came out, he has in fact noted that we are failing to achieve SDGs. It's primarily because there is a disconnect between the process of knowledge production and knowledge of products, knowledge that it gets produced is how it is being utilized. So there is a disconnect between in the process of knowledge democratization. Although STI, that is science, technology, and innovation, has emerged as game changer, there is some kind of this thing has not elevated to the policy level, and the countries have not recognized it as a fundamental tool to drive the local economy. And drive the mechanism that it has established for a sustainable development goal as well as for climate change. So there is a pivotal importance of STI knowledge sharing as a vehicle for eradicating poverty and also achieving sustainable development. So there are certain challenges, and these challenges are also the take-home messages that you can take, and at the same time develop maybe a concept note or a project outline and share it with us at UNESCO and tell us how UNESCO can help you. The first is to say that how access to scientific research and academic freedom can start influencing the world's path to achieve sustainable development goals. Can open science indeed fuel innovation? And as there are a disconnect between the knowledge production as well as knowledge utilization processes, can we better work, bring a sync into them and work together? How can global publishing processes and mechanisms can help, and how can they be, how can the access of those to common people can be improved? And of course, how can UNESCO help? And UNESCO, I would tell you, yes, UNESCO definitely can help. As early as in 20 September 1974, UNESCO had brought out a set of special recommendations on status of scientific researchers. And in that, we had said that that we will definitely help, how the knowledge gets, produced by the scientists, and also, how it can be shared. During the kickoff of World Summit on Information Society, which happened in 2003, UNESCO stressed out the importance of universal access to information of scientific knowledge and the dissemination of diffusion of scientific content and data and knowledge. And this was reflected in the C3, or there are action lines in World Summit Information Society action lines, and these action lines are given a code. So there are two codes, C3 and C7, which deals with e-science as well as access to information. And UNESCO leads these processes, and we need your support to drive this thing forward in the right direction. You may know that, like just about 2 months ago, UNESCO General Conference comprising of about 193 countries adopted a UNESCO recommendation of open science, and it invited member states to change the scientific culture in the world and adapt openness to science as well as scientific processes. So these scientific processes involve, four things. One, that it requires openness. Second, it requires inclusiveness. The third thing it requires is increasing access to and sharing of contents, technology, and processes of science. And finally, to generate scientific information and knowledge that can reach out to different people. So now I come to UNESCO strategy. So in order to do this, perhaps we need to relearn our ABCD again. And this is one thing I say it with very profound say involvement to this one, that unless we talk about advocacy, unless we bridge knowledge divide in different parts, unless we talk about capacity building, and unless we disseminate science, our required status of openness of science will not be achieved for sustainable development goal as well as for climate action. So for advocacy, what we have done is, the adaptation, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of open science policies still needs to be improved. And for this, what we have done is we have created a portal which in fact teaches the user on how they can develop a policy on openness, how they can monitor it, and how they can in fact make it utility friendly or user friendly. So global goap.info is the portal that we have created, which provides a policy information in different parts of the world. It gives a policy template that anyone can use to develop policy, but at the same time, it in fact provides you an opportunity to compare, what your neighboring countries are doing. So here in this case, if you go to our global open access portal, you can learn, what Sri Lanka is doing, like, or what what kind of enabling, say, environment improvement activities need to be done in Myanmar to take the agenda forward, or what can Bangladesh do better to make its data as well as the article closer to the public. Of course, we also need to bridge, and for this one, I would say that development, sophistication, or understanding of the open access is not evenly distributed by geography or by subject. So we need to foster a framework for backward and forward linkages between those who have knowledge on how these things can be done right, and those people who do not have the knowledge to do things right. So somehow UNESCO once again from UNESCO's side, I would like to commit that UNESCO's assistance is available to create such opportunities in this year and in the coming years. So the other thing, capacity building is extremely important. Many people do not understand, what open access to data and knowledge is all about. So there is a big, knowledge gap. For this, capacity building indeed is needed at all levels, and this is required for policymakers, scientific fraternity, researchers, librarians, publishers, students, everyone alike. So of course, we have got the tools, and we have developed, openly licensed educational resources. And if you go again to our global.gov.info, there are some courses available, and you can in fact request the course. You can in fact self-learn it, or request the assistance of able, say, instructor who can tell you, what is open access is all about, what are open access infrastructure, how resources can be mobilized for this, what are interoperability and retrieval processes. And right now, these courses are available in English as well as in Arabic, but soon, we will also be publishing in other languages. And finally, dissemination is extremely important, that, we join forces and create a system so that content, tools, and processes of open access are brought to the attention of the whole world. So if you're doing something right, we would definitely like to utilize it for everyone. So for this, what we have done is, we have in fact created for there is this, for example, like the page for Sri Lanka, page for Bangladesh, a page for Myanmar. You can go there, and if you think that some of the information are not adequate, that is this also provides you with an opportunity to update this information, put in your or add value to these pages, and we will definitely take things forward from there. And this also has some 5 to 10 minutes video available, which you can in fact read whether or not open access has anything to do with intellectual property rights, or intellectual property right will open access compromise intellectual property right, and so forth. So there are several tools of that sort is available. So use this, go visit this, and just get back to us and say that if you want to do something in your country, there is resources available. You can in fact approach us and request for resources, both in terms of in-kind support as well as some financial support to take things forward. So with this, I thank you so much. I wanted to show some video, but it looks like the video got it's in fact it simply shows what open access global open access portal data portal is operates. So thank you so much, and I hope that there will be a question that I can answer, and I hope that together we can in fact accelerate scientific work for peace and development, climate change, and also for a net zero initiative. So thank you so much, Raj. Over to you.
Thank you, Banu. That was exceedingly enlightening. Thanks very much for that slides, which talks about how UNESCO is propagating this theme of openness data, access to openness data on scientific information. I think the key message is A, B, C, D. We have to do advisory services, we have to build the bridges, we have to build a capacity, and we have to disseminate the knowledge. It's a huge task, one of the challenges, and UNESCO has taken these challenges, and the TERRE Policy Center, through its Smart Campus Cloud Network, which is a network for the global universities, we have been ensuring how this ABCD alphabets can reach to the universities at various levels, starting from faculty to the students. Our next speaker is Dr. Joe Thomas. Dr. Joe Thomas is a professor of public health at the Institute of Health Management, Melbourne, in Australia. He is currently engaged in developing a master's in public health and a doctorate of public health. The program that will be offered through this master's and PhD programs will soon be offered through the School of Global Health at Institute of Health Management. I think that is sort of a very streamlined biodata in a very short sentences. But Joe has been my friend for a long time, and I have seen his expansive knowledge about not only the United Nations system, but particularly in the countries like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and possibly in Myanmar as well. So he is really the speaker who knows the ground level audience, and he will be throwing some light on what are their needs, what are their obstacles, and how we can go further in this movement of open access data started by UNESCO. Joe.
Thank you, Dr. Rajendra. And let me acknowledge Dr. Banu. And today I'm here to amplify what Dr. Banu was talking about, the open data movement created by UNESCO. And what I'll be doing is that I'll be just adding to that presentation. Particularly, I look at SDG 3, Sustainable Development Goal related with health, and why that's important open data is in the context of Sustainable Development Goal. Also, I may draw some of the examples from SDG 17. SDG 17 is about a global partnership and why open data is important for implementing SDG 17. These are the two major points I'll be amplifying it today. And also let me thank the TERRE Policy Center, all the coordinators and the people who are working the technical support. So let me, on the outset, let me thank them, then let me move on that. I wanted to look at the issue of open data. When you open data, it's basically that Dr. Banu suggested that open data, as it's indicated, it's open data, but it should be accessible to anybody, everybody without any restriction. So that's the one important part of when we talk about open data. Then second, all data is accessible. That's the second part of it. But then who decides what's the criteria for what data is open, what data is not open? This is still an ongoing debate and ongoing discussion. But we have a template to talk about our data needs. That is Sustainable Development Goal. We know we are talking about 17 goals and almost 247 indicators. And within that, there are each targets, each goals, there are separate targets and indicators. So Sustainable Development Goal itself, as a global template for development, has a huge data needs. And also we know that almost 192 countries, they're supposed to submit a report of the implementation of SDGs to the UN General Assembly on a rotation basis. So this is the fourth or fifth round they submitted the data and the report of the progress of Sustainable Development Goal. But what we notice is that none of the countries has got all the data to report on these 247 indicators. And when we look at again carefully, not even half of the indicators we have enough data. We are not even talking about open data. We don't even have data at all. So this is one of the major barriers when you're talking about open data. We need data, then we can talk about open data. So the barriers to why this data, I'll just briefly come on that also. And also let me just briefly again mention about why data is important for achieving Sustainable Development Goal. And also what are the, specifically, I'll look into a little more what are the barriers, then what policies and programs should be in place to ensure data is available and data is open. So this is again the gist of my presentation. And when we look at closely analyze the data and data needs, open data needs or Sustainable Development Goal, we know that there is enough evidence to show that data is important for fostering economic growth and job creation. And open data is doubly essential to ensure that economic growth is monitored, economic growth is substantially achieved, and again, most important part of the job creation. Because job creation, when we translate the data need is, we know that unemployment data, in many countries, there is no unemployment data. We don't even know what percentage of young population are being unemployed. So if you don't have the data on unemployment, we don't know what data we have to, what intervention we need to create employment. Because we know Sustainable Development Goal, one of the important aspects is that investing in health and also education opportunities for young people. So we know that that's one of the major drawback of sustainable development goals in its totality. And also data is important for improving the efficiency, effectiveness of the public services. And again, open data adds to that efficiency and effectiveness of public services. And open data is essential for transparency, accountability, and the participation of citizens in the development process. So these are the major importance of the sustainable development goal and its linkages with data, and again, the open data. So we have a serious drawback in data in all these three areas. And also open data is important for facilitating better information sharing within the governments and between the governments and within the government different departments. So quite often, many departments, they don't have the data from another department. So a comprehensive development framework, this creates additional difficulties. And unless we have the data, we cannot progress, we cannot measure the progress. So I would say this is again one of the major drawbacks of implementing sustainable development goal. We don't have enough data, neither open data or existing data, private data, to measure the progress of all SDGs. As I mentioned a bit earlier, these 247 indicators, none of the countries has got at least about half of the indicators, the data to report on half of the indicators. And again, when you look at specifically in the context of SDGs, the data can help. Open data can help. Number one, to facilitate the standards, so standards of services, standards of care, standards of provision of expertise. So to set the standards, we need open data. And also data is again as a tool of accountability. And the third is that we have to look at the impact assessment. Sustainable development goal, we talked about as a poverty reduction, but to what extent poverty reduction is coming back and which population groups poverty is elevated, and again, who is left behind, any particular population group, any particular ethnic group. So that assessment of the impact of sustainable development goal, we need data. So these are some of the importance of why open data is important for sustainable development goal. When you look at 17 goals, there are 169 targets and 247 indicators. Just to give an idea about the magnitude of the data requirement we're talking about. And also we're talking about almost 192 countries. So it's a huge magnitude of the data requirement. And we know that UN Commission on the Statistics, UN Statistical Commission is the one who is coming out with the global standard. So I carefully analyzed their publication. They are the one who basically created the targets and indicators for sustainable development goal, but their contribution at the national level is limited. They have a global level indicators target and the definition of most of the targets and most of the indicators. But national level, that expertise is still need to be accessed by more than half of the countries. And again, when you look at SDG 3, Sustainable Development Goal 3 is about health and well-being. There are 13 targets and 28 indicators. And SDG 17 has got 19 targets and 25 indicators. So this is the data requirement when we're talking about. And if you look at the Sustainable Development Goal 3 and the data needs, we know that open data can provide, essentially it can improve the services or quality of care provided by the healthcare providers. Today, we know that in the context of COVID pandemic, the data requirement of age group, and there is a lot of controversy about what is the total number of mortality rate. Is it a 5 million, 4 million? Recently, just 2 days ago, there is the Lancet reported them assessing the data needs in the Indian context, what is the mortality rate, and they're estimating about more than 3 times what we assumed, because there is a perception that India, the COVID pandemic is impacting on a differential level. But when we compare with the United States, India has got a lesser mortality rate. But when we look at the data very carefully, that is not the case. Globally, the mortality rate is high, all the population group, particularly 60 plus. So since we don't have the data, comparable data between different countries, the issue of how to monitor the impact of COVID pandemic on different population group, different segment is seriously hampered. That also impacted our capacity to control, coming out with a non-pharmaceutical intervention. And just giving another example about it. And also when you talk about the price of medicine, we know that different agencies and different pharmaceutical companies, same product, they give different prices. So since we don't have a common data set to look at the generic medicine and its pricing in different countries across region, so that data, so the developing countries, particularly the developing countries, capacity to negotiate with the pharmaceutical countries to bring the price down is seriously hampered because of the lack of data. And also when you look at the need for comparing the data, for example, when you look at the infectious disease, we had to compare the clinical report from the social, demographic, geospatial data. This is not only to monitor, it's also important to predicting and preventing the disease outbreak, and also to track and to combat the disease when it does spread. So these are some of the data needs anyway. And when you look at the COVID pandemic again, there are parallel to this COVID pandemic, there are many other diseases, other severe diseases going on. If you take the case of children, almost 5 million children under the age of 5, including 2.4 million newborn, died during 2020. And that is approximately, that is the number of COVID deaths occurred. And also when you again look at 2.2 million children and youth aged 5 to 24 years, that is 43% of the adults died in 2022. But the tragedy is that in many countries, they don't have enough data to even to predict, even to report what level of infant mortality, what is the child mortality. And again, 1/3 of the middle income countries, that is 97 out of 135 countries, they have no reliable data on mortality indicators for the past 3 years. And just giving you an implication of lack of data, and again, lack of open data. See, there is I would say that there is a double-edged sword, that not having the data, at the same time, no open data. There are these two things, because there may be data, that data may be with the governments. Many of the government, there are quite often, they're reluctant to give the data into the public domain. So because of that, the population, general population, have difficulty to engage into the policy dialogue, to engage into the prevention needs, to engage into the treatment needs of the population. So in that point of view, data is important for treatment. I would even say that data is almost as equivalent to medication or treatment, because unless you have data, you cannot predict the medicine. You cannot provide the medication. We cannot predict the data, the medical needs. And we cannot predict the requirement of logistics for diagnostics. So this is, in the context of health, I would say that data is as important as medicine and diagnostics, because unless we monitor, unless we evaluate, we may not be able to give them the precise treatment and precise prevention intervention. And again, when you look at the health data, only just 40 countries got high quality national data in 2020. We're talking about almost 192 countries. Only 40 countries has got high quality data. They're mostly developed countries. So, and again, when you look at national data, there is a need for disaggregated data, like gender-based, age-wise, age group-wise. The disaggregated data is again not in the public domain. So open data should be, I mean, we should use SDG as the Sustainable Development Goal related indicators and target as a baseline for looking at the open data, and also importantly, defining the data transnationally. And again, when you look at the case of health-related data, as I mentioned earlier, the issue of what data we look at it. For example, neonatal mortality, we look at how many children are dying at the first 5th day. But at the same time, there is a significant number of data on stillbirths. In most countries, there is no data on the stillbirths. And even reporting on our vital statistics, very limited reliable data reporting on stillbirths, because stillbirth is linked with neonatal mortality, and also quite often it acts as a proxy data for maternal mortality and neonatal mortality. I'm just giving you an example about even when you have data, the nuances of the data, subnet data and metadata, and also reliable data based on the collected through national vital statistics data system. So I'm just giving you some of the complexity, some of the difficulties about not having the data. And also when you talk about another important thing about the data governance, how data is being governed. In many countries now, data related, and in many countries, there are data-related policies that's coming up. But then the problem is that whether that is from the open data perspective or a closed data perspective. Many of the national government, they treat data as a resource because the data is a tradable commodity. Data is almost like a cash currency. So this is one way many people looked at it. At the same time, data is an essentially a component which fuels national development. Data act as a kind of a petroleum for a petrol engine. So this is the way to compare when you look at this. And also when you look at the data stewardship or the data governance or data management is another, the concept is evolving that the policy should have a strong emphasis on data stewardships, means who is the custodian of data, how the data is preserved, and also in what software using. And in many countries, there are data incompatibility. One set of data cannot be used in many other countries. So we don't have a data compatibility policy between different countries and data usages. And today we know that the software expansion is tremendous. And many of the data collected in the old format, sometimes it is not even updated because the data management system went ahead much far ahead of that. But in that process, what happened? There is no standardization of data depository, data usage. It cannot be transformed. I still remember when I started learning data processing, I used to use a program called Word 2000 and then WordStar. And now even that data that software doesn't exist. But when I looked into my database, I could see that some of my data was collected and the reports are in the old WordStar format. So it is not automatically transferred. So this is another difficulty when we transform national level standards of what data sets are collected, what software is collected. And we also know that sometimes software become outdated. Take the case of a Nokia phone. Once upon a time, Nokia phone was the phone. If you look at the case of mobile phone, and also look at the case of the BlackBerry phone, that is one time one of the most sophisticated phone, and recently they even stopped production. So that way, when you talk about data management, we also have to look at the national standards of data. This is another issue which we had to work with IT industry, the data transferability and data indicators and a common data sets which can be shareable. And also when they create the new software, there's a need for looking at whether existing data could be upgraded to that level, or can we create a plugin for upgrading the old data sets. So these are some of the random issues about when we talk about data, open data at the moment. And I would suggest that the next World UN Statistical Conference is scheduled to held next year. And probably the open data movement, they should use that statistical conference as a forum for advocating further for open data, and also pushing and advocating for the UN Statistical Commission to come out with a common declaration, like SDG declaration, similarly a data declaration. I mean, I would say data revolution, and looking at the data ownership, data accessibility. So these are some of the possibilities. But before I conclude, I just wanted to highlight the issue of SDG 17. Sustainable Development Goal is about partnership. And without partnership, we know that Sustainable Development Goal all 1 to 17 cannot be implemented. Within Sustainable Development Goal 17, one of the major issues about global trade agreement, TRIPS, trade-related intellectual property rights. And we know that recently South Africa and India requested for a waiver on intellectual property rights about clinical data, diagnostic data related with COVID pandemic, give a suspension for a time being during the COVID pandemic. All the COVID-related data, diagnostic data, the logistics data, and data related with the medical data, all this should be on public domain. So this is a resolution presented to, and this is the resolution presented to the World Trade Organization, and that discussion is still going on. But in the context of COVID pandemic, the importance of data comes in. And also today we know that many of the vaccines, the data behind, the clinical data behind the vaccines and the diagnostic facilities are actually, if you look at it carefully, it is not from the private domain. It is actually from the public domain, means the research for the vaccination, the research for diagnostics, all came from the publicly funded research. And finally, the final product is bought out by some of the pharmaceutical companies. And even the pharmaceutical companies, the vaccines are paid upfront. You paid in advance. So the cost of vaccine it should be made very low because of the quantity it makes the profit. So COVID pandemic again gives us an impetus to look at the data, the governance and the data stewardship and the importance of the open data source, and particularly in the clinical data, medical data, and the diagnostic data, and the medical, the molecular data, and how the pharmaceuticals are created. So the intellectual property rights should be suspended, at least for the time being, in the context of COVID pandemic. So this is the major message coming from the open data source, the campaign. And I underline the call from UNESCO, and which is amplified by Dr. Banu, the importance of open source data. SDG cannot be implemented unless we have a strong, very, very important, very strong movement towards open data, and probably working with UN Security Council, maybe UN General Assembly, working with the existing UN organization, UN Statistical Commission, and again, maybe going back to the UN General Assembly to get another declaration enforcing the need for global data and open data. And I'll conclude saying that the most important element for survival is water and air. It is almost free. And similarly, data is the blood for the Sustainable Development Goal. So all the critical data should be in the open domain. And I hope this movement will be picked up by the audience from the university students. And most of you are producing data, but your data creation as a researcher is a very localized data. We're talking about national data at the same time for the micro data as well. So let me conclude and emphasizing and amplifying the call for open data movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Joe Thomas. And he has concluded by saying data is a blood. Is essential for our existence and the existence of the biosphere. It's not only about the humans. I think while listening to him, I understood that probably it will be worth checking how the other animals generate the data, share it, and then making it accessible to the others. That will be some of the interesting subject, which, though I'm diverting a bit from it, and Bhanu may not like that kind of innovation in such debate, that we are not talking about the other animals, because human beings are a very small percent of the total biosphere. So it will be interesting to see how other world is surviving. They must be having some kind of a method to share the data from each other, because they do work collectively while flying from Antarctica to down in the south or down in the north. But I think we have got a list of challenges with us, and the task of not only UNESCO, but each one of us is so formidable that we need to think collectively. And it's a good that we have three important countries together: Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka. And there are others in South Asia. So what we are doing is the South Asia becomes a center for taking up this initiative on open access data. And I think one thing is very clearly coming out is we need a solution which is based on collective wisdom and consulting all other countries in terms of not only defining what we are doing, but also generating the data, classifying it in a meaningful way, make it available, free of cost, and it should not become a burden for doing the things. I would like to say that we are already at, I'm trying to see the time, we are already at 3:15. So the time-wise, we have only 15 minutes left. And I'm going to talk about what is called as a solution to our challenges. And let me start by sharing the screen and try to speed up my presentation so that there is enough time for question and answers. I also would like to say to the audience from the 3 countries that on your YouTube, there is a possibility of you adding the questions. And my colleagues, Saurabh as well as Durga, will be collecting those comments and the questions and will be sending it to me in order to make our question and answer dialogue more meaningful and more interesting and searching rather than just one-way delivery from our side. So what is my solution to the challenges? I start with what is called as putting the youth at the center of this. Universities represent the youth, whether it is a student or it's a faculty. We are not talking about old generations. We are talking about the youth who can generate data, who can classify them, make it meaningful for the society, and not only make it meaningful only for storing in a library, so that from library to the society, they have a capability of doing it and then utilizing it for finding the solutions. So that network, what we are creating is that the universities which represent the youth. It is called as a smart campus cloud network. And I will appeal to all the universities in Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka to go to our website, which will be displayed here, and become a membership. Take a membership, become a member, and it doesn't cost you any money. And then start sharing the data. So our network represents the means to access data, a means to share the data. And that is a solution that we are starting with. It also encourages generating a data which youth are engaged in the universities. I'm trying to make it a full screen. We are at the UN Decade of Action. And one of the reasons why it is called as a Decade of Action is because in 2030, the SDGs will see their endpoints. The Decade of Action has started in 2020, and we have 10 years to achieve them, which we have set in a process in 2015. We are already getting a view that we are failing to achieve, but youth have a capacity to turn the tides. They can make it happen. And one of the tools they have is partnership and open access data. I'm trying to, yes. So this is an existential crisis, which is limiting the temperature of Earth to 2 degrees centigrade. And as per many of the small island countries, we should be restricting to rise of temperature to only 1.5 degrees centigrade. And if we don't do it, we will have to vacate the Earth and probably start going to the another planet. What we are trying to do is a green line, and whatever current practices, we will reach to 3.5 degrees centigrade. And if we don't do any action and sit on a sofa and relax, it is a 4.5 degrees centigrade. So we have a choice here. Do we act fast or we just relax? There is another existential crisis of biodiversity. 1 million species would be extinct by end of this century. And the rate of extinction is never experienced before. Because many in the audience will think that some species get extinct naturally anyway. But this is not true in the present cases, that the rate of extinction is much more than a natural extinction rate. So the solution we have to invest in future and not in the past, as the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says. And the future is nothing but youth. And youth is their habitat is university and their campus. And hence the university campus network becomes such an important tool and a basic ground to nurture for open access data. So Smart Campus Cloud Network, which my organization runs, and let me at this point of time introduce myself. I'm chairman of TERRE Policy Center. And one of the projects, which is global in nature, is a Smart Campus Cloud Network of universities, where all of you, the audience representing the universities, can join. You can join as a university chief, you can join as a volunteer, you can join as a student, and there are various possibilities how you can help in enriching this network and help on number of things of SDGs, carbon neutrality, and open access data. The main theme is learning by doing and not by learning by reading or learning by talking. It's learning by doing and accelerating by sharing. These are the themes which we use and promote in our network, which is a digital network for number of universities, which have now more than 400 universities, out of which 15 are from away from India. They are from abroad. Why we selected universities? What SCCN does? It molds the minds of youth, incubates innovation, transforms talents, leverages the level field competition, and deploys the digital technology. So these are the about 10 SDGs out of 17, which are directly or indirectly connected to what universities can do in their campuses to demonstrate, pilot, and scale up. Open access and carbon neutrality has been taken as a prime priorities for the universities to work on. Carbon emissions have to be controlled. And more than 100 countries have now declared a carbon neutrality anywhere between 2050 to 2070. And I think the universities can take a lead in making that happen by starting the work in their campus. Open access allow communication, cutting edge technologies to come in the forefront, and the carbon neutrality to be achieved. Why campuses? Because it has a long-term and short-term impacts. In the land, we plant the seeds. In university campus, we plant the minds of this youth. It builds the awareness, induces the responsibilities, and allows the piloting and the demonstration. We today have 400 plus universities. 250 plus campuses have taken a pledge of carbon neutrality. And a digital cloud dashboard is initiated by which you can share the data, which is an open peer-reviewed process. The IoT platforms are operational. The number of universities are measuring their energy, water consumption, as well as carbon emissions and the air quality data through the IoT platform on the real-time basis. The sustainability reports, which have been only the domain for the private sector, are now being produced by the universities, including those in India's, and I'm sure we will be now working with the universities in Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka in order to get them there. These are the partners. We are very proud to be partnered with UNESCO, and our friend Bhanu has been a prime, what you call it, as a supporter as well as encourager for various activities of Smart Campus Cloud Network. And he is the one who takes it to the higher level as well as on a global platform, what we represent. These are some of the guidelines that we have produced. There is a toolkit how one can work in a campus to achieve SDGs within the universities. what we are doing is we are localizing the SDGs in a university campus. And we are also developed the water guidelines. We have developed what are the guidelines of single-use plastic free. And these are all available in open. We have a campus landscape framework. One can learn from it. Give us what results they have achieved, where the failures are, and we will report it on our dashboard. The another project is a carbon neutrality, mainly related to the energy. And we also link the open access to the carbon neutrality because we strongly believing, and we have a number of reasoning by saying that carbon neutrality can be accelerated by open access scientific information. So from talk, we are coming to action. So disclosing openly carbon emissions from the universities and the university telling the private sector to disclose it openly is going to the movement for carbon neutrality. We call it not zero, net zero. Nobody likes the marks zero in their papers in the universities. But we are talking about net zero, which is going to help our Mother Earth. And we are also formulating the roadmaps for the universities for carbon emissions so that the youths, when they go to the marketplace, they get employment in various industries, they probably would be doing the similar activities in their industry, including generating the data through the innovative and the creative ideas. There are a number of benefits of achieving carbon neutrality. We will be the first one, which is not listed here, is that it allows us to exist. Without carbon neutrality, we are in a catastrophic zone and we cannot afford that. So we keep on talking about two SDGs, clean energy and climate action, which are ingredients of the carbon neutrality. Not zero, net zero is a pledge which all the universities faculty can take on our website, and we will report it to the highest authority in United Nations that this university, these are the pledges that they have taken and they want to achieve the carbon neutrality by making some kind of a roadmap and action plans. This pledge for a not zero, net zero was launched on the 5th anniversary of Paris Agreement on 12th December 2021. So we are more than 1 year old, and the number of universities taking the pledges are going up daily basis. And I'm sure with these kind of regional workshops, it will go further up. So that is the last slide. We want to say that let's walk the talk and just do it. Open access tool helps us to just do it. Thank you very much. And I'm sure the universities in the region will be in a position to help others to climb so that no one is left behind. Thank you very much. So I have here number of questions, and that's where we start the dialogue with the youth. All the speakers here, let me admit it, belong to the past generation. And we are talking about what future generation should be doing in open access. So there are many revolutionary youth which says, why this past generation people should be telling us doing this? Because they are the one who brought the Mother Earth to this state. But let's listen to them. And I have first Salima Subramaniam. She says, thank you for highly informative session. Sir, how can we work together on accessing centralized data for SDG research? And I will give the floor to first to Joe and then to Bhanu. And each one will restrict to 1 minute each in giving this data. And I think this is an important question which generates what action should follow from our webinar. Joe.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that question. And it's a genuine question coming from many other researchers. They look for data, they may not be able to find out. We have data, it is large extent of data, publicly available data, but the difficulty is that it is scattered all around on the net. Even with the keyword search, it may not come up because the data sets are the areas which we are looking at. In each ministry, for example, if you take the case of health, in Indian context, there are National Health Survey, NHS 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are longitudinal data. Then census data is accessible to most of the countries. So there are, one of the difficulties that there is no catalog of open data system. It is just coming up. One of the UN Statistical Commission's work is they're creating a kind of a list of data depository. So maybe this is the one thing you have to carefully monitor that, what are the data depository institutions and agencies coming up each country. This is some of the newly evolving experience of the many of the developing countries. They try to bring the data in one place. India also got government of India got a web domain for the open data depository. But if you look at it, there are very limited data sets are available, but it is slowly coming up. As a researcher, maybe you keep a track of data depositories of each domain, data coming from various domains. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Bhanu?
I would just say two things. One, that we lack proper policy. So I think the government must be impressed on to institute and develop new policies on data management, both on data collection, data archiving, as well as data sharing protocols. And in this one, I think many countries do not have the right type of capacity. And then UNESCO stands ready to equip the governments to develop policies, as well as to develop repositories, where some of these, SDG data can be archived or stored. And also the other thing is, even if there are data that is available, they are not archived by following certain, say, standard and protocol. And some of these data also carries, say, copyright. These data are copyrighted. So I think what we need to do is to develop a policy that somehow propagates the idea of copyleft, so that everything becomes open and available for people to start utilizing for various activities and products. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bhanu. And thank you to Salima Subramaniam for raising this question, which triggers some kind of what future actions that we need to do. The next question is from Dr. New Yi, I guess from Myanmar. He's asking a question in context of open access. Please define how access is provided to the rural locations. I think Myanmar has a number of rural locations, and that's why probably, and remote, not only rural, remote locations. And how access is provided to them, and what could be the means of doing it. I think I will give a floor to Dr. Bhanu.
Yeah, I think this is a very straightforward process. As I said, many countries do not know how to share the data properly, how to process the data so that rural people can benefit. This requires both treating the data in the right way, that its visualization will improve. For example, if a farmer wants to apply, say, herbicide or any kind of insecticide, I think providing data on rainfall will definitely matter to them. But if you provide them that it's so much per inch of rainfall is likely to happen in that particular region, that will not be the right type of data given to them. I think we have to somehow improve the visualization of data in the right way. And then, as I said, UNESCO have the the means as well as, a technique, whereby data are rightly visualized, for the benefit of the rural people. Thank you.
Very good. Very good, Banu. There are a number of questions which are coming up, and I'm sure we won't have much time, but let me take some of the interesting questions so that they get their curiosity fulfilled. And then probably in about next 10-15 minutes, we will probably conclude it. So there is a one from Dr. Gunawardene, I believe from Sri Lanka. But there is no question. He's only referencing what is called as a COAR, and that is a Confederation of Open Access Repositories. I want to ask Dr. Bhanu first, and then Dr. Joe, whether such confederation exists, or Dr. Gunawardene is suggesting that we should have that. I'm not sure. Bhanu?
I think, yes, it does exist, and Caroline Shearer, is currently heading it. We are in contact with them. And then some of the data that I showed, earlier on, how many repositories are there in different parts of the world. In fact, this data was, taken from them. But if you go to Global Open Access Portal and go to Sri Lanka tab and tap it, you will find, how many repositories are there in Sri Lanka, for example. So I think, it exists. One of the things, that is the limiting, aspect of that one is, many of these repositories are developed using different, say, data collection as well as archiving protocols. So they are not interoperable. So sometimes, what happens, you collect data from, from one repository and try to somehow, compare data from another one. The data are produced by with different standards, and they are not compatible to each other. So some of these things, we are in fact impressing on, how some of these standards get somehow be normalized, so that one system of data archiving can speak with another system of data archiving. So interoperability is one of the aspects that UNESCO is working as well as innovating as even as we speak right now. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Banu. Dr. Joe?
Yeah, as Dr. Banus mentioned, that there are depositories from national depositories, and also there are association of data depositories. And also, if you look at carefully, the national statistical organizations and the UN Statistical Commission, they also got certain data depository, and they define the quality of the data, define the variables. So when you talk about data, data should be comparable. That's one of the most important thing, aspect of the data. As Dr. Banu again mentioned that the interoperability of the data, and that definition, that standards is also greatly contributed by the UN Statistical Commission. So there are institutions. So the open data movement is slowly picking up the momentum through different institutions, different legal framework, different technical expertise, and also global standards, national standards. So this global open data movement is picking up. That's my observation. Thank you.
Thank you. So what comes to my mind? Yes, Banu. Go ahead.
One of the issues, which is in fact, worrying is these days, data are not, collected as we were collecting it before. Most of these data are sensed. You do not even know, but your data has already been, there are AI as well as, other type of machine learning tools that can in fact, go snoop and take the data, away from you. So right now, what UNESCO is working is to develop guideline on how this data collected by using different type of sensors as well as through say automated means can somehow be systematized, so that it not only makes those people who are subject to data collection aware of that their data is being siphoned up somewhere, but at the same time they are aware of what type of data they can give without compromising their say privacy as well as like other sort of say transparency issues. So we're working on that one as well. But this is the area that we require your cooperation or cooperation of those people who are listening to provide us with new tools as well as methods. And we definitely we look forward to working with you to advance it further. Thank you.
And I just wanted to add to what Dr. Banu suggested, that and let me just give an example about it. All of you are familiar with Facebook, and Facebook recently changed their name to Meta. Actually, they're talking about metadata. And what is the metadata? Again, let me give an example about your emotion is a data. For example, when you read a posting, what emotion came into your mind? What emotion you expressed through your typing, your communication, whether it's anger, whether it's pressure. So this is a level of data we are talking about, not anymore the number we are talking about. So very significant that the Facebook changed its name to Meta. So we are talking about metadata. The quality of the data is changing, the magnitude, the measurements, the definition of the data is changing. So when you request for the open data, we are much behind the scene. So for example, how we are going to demand from the Facebook about open data system, because they're talking about our emotion and what is our the emotional response to certain posting. To that level, the data, the capturing of the data is went ahead. I'm just giving an example about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. The next question is a really basic question, and I think I liked it most. Let's see, the answers also are liked by me and the audience. And it is basically addressed to Banu. Maybe Joe also can put input, but very interesting question. He says, okay, we give the access to data. It is asked by Tin Lab Y. And what he says is, yes, data can be accessed. It can be made available, but how can you make it understand by the user? Banu.
This is very simple, and this is something that we propose to our say clientele as well as with our member states. Is data literacy must be there, and data literacy needs to be say a part of the curriculum. And up until now, we have in fact only even those students who take say tertiary courses, they are taught about research methods, but none of these people are taught about data. So data literacy, I think will soon become a very important and required say course that will be taught at different universities. And in fact, we have gone a step further that, this needs to be taught not only at the tertiary level, but at the high school level itself, so that, when students finish their high school, they're already aware of, what data is all about, how I can use it, what kind of data I can provide it to everyone. Because right now, most of the mobile phone users are young people. And without knowing, these young people may be sharing many of the vital information, which are not supposed to be shared. So I think, this data literacy thing, needs to be a part of the school curriculum. And I think, that will eventually improve, how data can be not only collected, but also can be utilized in the right way. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Banu.
Professor Joe, can you?
Joe, yes, Dr. Joe?
Sorry. Yeah, and let me just add to what Dr. Banu mentioned about the data. And today we know that the biggest data depository is Google. So you can ask anything, and it's almost like God. That's the way it is interpreted, the Google. So, but the difference is that how the data is converted into knowledge. And that is the crux of it. Data may be there, but they're converting the data to knowledge. That process is important thing. Let me again give an example about it. You have the millions of recipes on the Google, but the recipe will not be converted into a good dish unless it is processed. That processing can be done by the human being, not necessarily the machine or by the Google. So that way, how do you use the data is going to be an important thing. Converting the data into knowledge. That will be the human contribution towards managing the data and the data governance. And that I don't think it can be replaced even with the artificial intelligence in the near future. Thank you.
Wow. I think that adds to our further challenges. Can you hear me well? I just changed my computer because my earlier computer got discharged. I think it has too much of a data, looks like. So, and probably most of it I'm not accessing. But can you hear me, Joe? Yes, thank you. Well, I think we are coming to the end of the interesting questions, but not necessarily all the questions, which we have collected and will be sending to speakers for them. But there is a very last question, and it is specifically addressed to Bhanu. And in fact, it comes from Pushpakalam. Not able to pronounce it properly. I'm sorry for that. I excuse. But what it says is, what are the UNESCO's future plans to make sure that this open access data movement becomes a top priority of United Nations? I mean, I can guess why such question is coming, because I think it looks like your speeches were extremely successful. They say that probably these are the speeches, these are the ideas which you put forward could be a starting point to find the solutions to our crisis. So the question is, what kind of ideas that UNESCO has in order to make it prioritize in UN systems? That's what I guess what the questioner is asking. Manu?
Very interesting and very very stimulating, question, in all possible sense of the word. Right now, we are planning for for the next 4 years, 2022 to 2025. And primarily what we are doing is, we are in fact trying to communicate to our member state, what is the knowledge as well as the relevance of open solutions, because we took it as an open solution, open access or open data, open content, open free and free software, free and open source software, and so forth. These are all building blocks, that has driven until now, our scientific processes. So what we're doing right now is, we are trying to develop capacity, number one, to develop a policy on these open solutions, mainstream these open solutions in different type of say activities of the government, monitor how these things are being utilized by the countries, and how these things are somehow be translated into digital public good. See, there are things that like right now in everything that you do, whether you write a small piece of paper in your computer, or whether you do a very high end like calculus to solve say a climate model. In all of these, you are creating something digitally. And if you're doing it, the source of funding is coming from somewhere. And we think that, about 90% of the source of funding is coming from the government. And if the government is providing, government is taxpayers' money. So if taxpayers' money is generating all this data, this should be given free to everyone. So what we are doing right now is, we are in fact trying to impress on the countries that how can we foster knowledge sharing for strengthened capacities to develop open access and open data policies. This is one thing. And we are also trying to foster knowledge sharing and skill development in the digital age. This is, I think, these are the two very important things. And in this, we look at three things. One, that we look at like the tools that are utilized, that also needs to be made open. We also look at content, that are in fact populated in digital media, and that also should be made. But one of the things is, that we're also impressing is, it's not only tools and contents, but at the same time, we should also open the processes that goes behind. So if that processes are also, made open, I think, everyone benefits around the world. So this is, I think, the domain that we are working right now, and we'll continue to work for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Very good. I think that that probably takes how the UNESCO takes challenges and what is the roadmap ahead. Joe, you would like to have final word on that? Then I can start concluding.
I would link this with SDG 17. SDG 17 is about global partnership. Maybe global partnership also includes a global partnership towards creating open source data. So there's a need for rediscovering SDG 17. So we have, and also there are institutional mechanisms to bring it forward, taking it to utilizing the existing multilateral and bilateral mechanisms. But definitely there is a need for creating new institutions, new policy framework, new approaches towards creating open source data as an important initiative as part of the sustainable development. And I would say that open data itself is a development imperative and also a desirable development process. And there is no doubt we cannot go back from the call for or advocacy for open source data. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Joe. We come to the conclusion. I think we are overrun by about half an hour, but I think it has been useful. Can you hear me well? Yes. But I think it was useful time spent. This interaction and dialogues are the basic foundations of United Nations anyway. And we could see how Dr. Bhanu is responding to this challenging situation and challenging questions. And one of the things which comes to my mind is that every country has a research centers. For example, India has so many research centers and industrial research centers. There are more than 40 of them. And maybe other countries like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar also has such centers. But then having such restricted centers, I mean, I would venture to say that they are the ghettos of knowledge. Sorry to say that word, but there the knowledge gets confined, and that doesn't not necessarily comes out to the common people. What exactly? Maybe it will come out after 10 years or 15 years. So we come back again to the university and the colleges, which should become, each one should become a research center. And there's where the open data can be generated for giving it to the open societies. So if you consider Indian situation, every university and a college should become a CSIR. Why not? And I think that would help in generating a data, disseminating it, because the universities are quite widespread geographically. And they can be near to the societies which should benefit from this open access data. I think we will continue this dialogue with the help of Dr. Bhanu as well as Dr. Joe. And I would like to thank the audience from the 3 countries for excellent questions, which shows that they have been attentively listening to this so-called new area. I mean, I know Bhanu has said that we are talking about openness for a long time, but it is a renewed way it is coming to the surface, particularly in COVID-19, where people are talking about why the patents of vaccines should be approved by WTO, or why the patent should be applied at all. Because the whole humanity is in a crisis. So where is the question of patents? And where is the question of restricting to the knowledge? So I think these are the questions which are coming up timely. And I would like to thank Dr. Bhanu to take up this issue on a regional basis, particularly where the majority of the world's population lives. That is South Asia. And thanks to Dr. Joe for spending his time. I know it must be getting late in Australia, but thanks for your time. And thanks again to the audience for listening attentively. I also would like to thank Saurabh and Durga for making sure that with a little bit of technical glitches, I think it went on well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. Maybe
Yes.
we can also show our
Yes. Sorry.
guidelines for the
Yeah,
audience. Yeah.
Right. I must apologize for that. We have the last item, which in fact is related to the openness. We are disseminating certain publications with the help of, we developed with the help of UNESCO, and we want to release it so that it is immediately available. So we are doing an action on open access data. Go ahead. So this is our first brochure. This is called the UNESCO TERRE Awareness Brochure. And it talks about the Pathfinder future to succeed and sustain. And that is the tool is the open access data. The second one, roadmap for carbon neutrality. And it says that unless we have openness, we cannot have the achievement of carbon neutrality. And it talks about first baby steps for the same. These are the carbon neutral campus guidelines. These are complicated, but probably comes stage after creating an awareness and a capacity building. And they are called as a not zero, net zero movement. Thank you very much.